There are religious dimensions, but it's not about religion. It's about nationalism. Israelis on one side, and who are the Palestinians? They're the Arab population that was living in the land of Palestine that would become part of Israel when this conflict starts. Another misconception, if the Palestinians would just stop doing the violence. We have to talk about the violence of these very times. If we're going to, I don't want to stop all the violence. I don't want anybody to die. Israeli, Palestinian, we have to stop the violence number one. And then we can, bridge the gap. Stop the harm first, and then we can figure out how to get these two peoples to live together. Israeli casualties in the past 10 years have been on the scale of about 1,000. A little bit more, about half of them civilians. The suicide bombings of buses really peaked in 2002. Last suicide bombing was, I believe, in 2006. Suicide bombings aren't happening, which is a good thing. And they're really traumatized with their society. On the Palestinian side, what we don't see is that for every Israeli that's been killed, 3 or 4 or 5 more Palestinians have been killed. And again, about half of those are civilians too, not engaged in Israel. And so that's amounting to about 6,000 in the past 10 years. So I want to give a little background very quickly because you guys have been waiting a long time. I'll really go as quick as I can to the background of the main issues of the conflict. And then we want to open it up and hear what you guys think and your questions, concerns, and all that. So, like I said, this really started about 1900. It starts with 2 isms, both coming out of Europe. Back in the 1800s, in Europe, it was a tough time for Jews. Jews didn't know whether to assimilate or what could they do. European civilization, European countries were kind of hostile. But, Jews felt, we can still get along. We're just as German, we're just as French, we're just as any nationalism as anybody else. We just have a different religion and cultural background. Well, after pogroms started in the late 1800s out of Russia, things started to get worse. In Russia, a lot of Jewish refugees came out of Russia because they were being slaughtered. This led the Jewish community within Europe to reevaluate, do we assimilate, or what can we do? And one of the persons that was a leader in this reevaluation was a guy named Theodor Herzl. Theodor Herzl, when he saw a mob going through Vienna, said, okay, we can't assimilate. This isn't going to work. It's not going to work at all. So what can we do? He wrote a book called Der Judenstaat. It was a German Jew, so it was in German. And it said basically, hey, we need to have our own Jewish state. We're not going to be able to get along with these other peoples. We're going to be persecuted. So what we need to do to save ourselves from persecution is go somewhere else where we can be safe amongst ourselves. Next year, he had a conference. And that conference said, we're going to create this state in Palestine. Palestine is being a historic name for the Holy Land that is being ruled by the Ottoman Empire during this time. What's going on in Palestine during this time? Under Ottoman rule, Ottomans are Turks, not very friendly with the Arabs. They were ruling over the Arabs during this time. During this time in Palestine, most of the population is Arab, almost 99%. You have, it's a backward society, you might say. A little harsh to say. It's an agrarian society. You have your holy sites, ancient history, then you have people who are basically farmers. About 85% of the population, about 1900, is Palestinian, Arab, Muslim. About 10% of the population is Palestinian, Arab, Christian. About 5% of the population is Jewish. This includes, check this out, Palestinian Arab Jews who practice Judaism but are Arab culturally, but also a lot more Jews who came from other countries. Jews have been coming to the Holy Land for centuries because of the holy sites, because it was a place you wanted to go and die near the holy sites. But of course, like I said, they started moving there in numbers after all this persecution in Europe. This movement to move to Palestine to create a Jewish homeland is called Zionism. So that's one of the isms that we get out of Europe that helps cause this conflict. Second ism is imperialism or colonialism, or however you want to put it. The Ottoman Empire at this time was about to collapse. Everybody knows it's dying. So European powers like, well, we want a piece of that action. We want that land. Britain and France in particular during World War I say we're going to carve up the Middle East. And that's exactly what they did. All those borders, Iraq, Lebanon, Syria, what you see on the map today is what they do after World War I. Britain and France in particular. And so they took control of what we call the Middle East. Of course, European powers, you guys tell me, how do European powers, how are they going to feel about the native population? They're backwards, what else? They're stupid. They're less than us. How can we use them to benefit ourselves? Exactly. So, this is the heyday of the British Empire, They're the rulers, they're the superiors, and these people should be happy that they're ruling over them. So, supposedly, according to League of Nations, when Britain took over Palestine, it was supposed to help Palestine achieve democracy. But the British had some sympathies. They like this idea of Zionism. They're like, we want to be good Christians, so we're going to help the Jews find a homeland. And it came out in the Lord Balfour Declaration that said we're going to create a Jewish homeland in the state of Palestine. It also said that we're not going to really bother, we're not really going to, it shouldn't hurt the native population's rights. Of course, the British weren't going to ask the native population what they thought about it. So, another reason why the British wanted to help Jews immigrate to Palestine is, okay, they wanted to run it as a colony. So, what better than a proxy settler population? So this is where the colony started. The British encouraged Zionist Jews to settle, move to Palestine, buy land and settle. And the native population said, hey, wait a minute, we don't want to go along with that. And almost immediately in 1920, riots broke out. So it's going to be an ugly scene up until 1948 between Jews and Arabs. Because under colonial rule, the Palestinians can't do anything about these Jews that are moving in. And the Jews, of course, are looking for a place to be free of persecution. So they're just, this is where we need to go. This is exactly what the clash was at the beginning. And then it grows and it gets worse. Of course, as the 20s and 30s progress, the rise of totalitarianism and fascism in Europe, more and more Jews come to Palestine. They're not welcome other places like America, Britain, even after the Holocaust is covered, does not want to have these people. But where can they go? Palestine. And so this creates a problem for the British who are ruling over Palestine. They're encouraging Jewish migration in Palestine, but this is fueling the conflict, and it finally comes to a head. Make a long story short, the UN tried to solve the problem by dividing up Palestine into the Jewish and the Arab state. How do you think the two sides feel about this? How do you think Palestinian Arabs would feel about the UN dividing it into Palestine into two states? Anybody? How would they feel? Yeah. Why are you dividing the country? What about you guys today in the UN have how are Jews, Zionist Jews, who want to create a state? How are they going to do this? Yeah. They're going to be like, we're finally going to get our state, which is what we need to be safe. So, this is what leads to a conflict. And the War of 48 is what comes out next. It is there's some important consequences of War 48. This is also one of the most polarizing things about this conflict. This is one of the most controversial things. If you see yourself as pro-Israeli, you're going to see it very one way. If you see yourself as pro-Palestinian, you're going to see it very another way.